So one of the most controversial issues that is taking place here, stateside, is surrounding the issue of patriotism. And it's causing a lot of division and separation and discord among various groups of people. Now, the definition, patriotism, means a vigorous support for one's country, or defense, support and love for one's country. And when I hear or think about patriotism, it always brings me back to one of my co-workers that I used to work with a number of years ago. And he was an older African-American gentleman who served in the Vietnam War. So you know that war took place between, I think, in 1955 through to the early 1970s. So that was a very long, extended war. Based upon what I remember from talking with my former co-worker, he was drafted into the war at a very young age. I don't think he had even really finished high school at that time, but he was around 18 when he was drafted, so he really didn't have any choice in terms of going. And back in those days, if a country went to war, they can create, some type of law that says you have to fight in this war, and that was the draft. And for most poor or working class males back in the States at that time, there was no other option. So for the most part, my former co-worker was drafted. So here he is, a young African-American male, leaving his country for the first time and going to another country, going to Vietnam, under the conditions that he is now a soldier and fighting on behalf of the United States. So it says from his experiences that he saw a lot of bloodshed. He had friends that he, soldiers that they became friends over there, that were killed and did not return back home. And that it was a very brutal war because a lot of it involved face-to-face combat. At the time that the war was going on, there was a growing anti-war movement taking place stateside. And he says that when he came back, it was one of the worst experiences that he had. And there was a protest. So wherever they had those protests back then, and he remembers coming back as a soldier in his uniform and being, one, booed, and two, spat at. And I thought that must have been a very demoralizing experience for a young person to have gone through war as a soldier and then come back to the country that you defended and come back under those conditions. And in addition to that, as a young black person coming back, knowing what challenges you probably left, and coming back and not even get some level of recognition and some level of due respect for patriotism. And I remember he always mentioned that about coming back. He discussed about being in Vietnam, his experiences. I always got a sense that it was the most disappointing thing for him was coming back and the reaction that he got, the spitting and the booing. I think that's pretty it's pretty sad to hear a soldier say that. So that's why when I now, you know, hear about people discussing about patriotism and the whole idea about, you know, who's patriotic and who's not, and how it's defined and how it's not, and the whole controversy around that, I always think about my former work colleague and what he might be thinking, or what he might say in regards to patriotism and what it means for him. So the question is, does America love its troops? I can also say the same thing about England, because wherever America has fought, England has been right there beside them, sending in our own soldiers, you know. So do we love our troops? Okay, so in hindsight, to answer that question, I would say on the one hand, yeah, America does love its troops. I think it loves the G.I. Joe, patriotic soldier, gung-ho, we're going to war and fighting for our country troop. Those troops, the ones that they send to war, I think, yes, it definitely loves the image of the soldier, the image of the troops all working in unison to fight for the respected country. So, but on the other hand, I don't think it reciprocates that type of love. I don't think it reciprocates that level of patriotism that the soldier, the troops, give to it as a country. Because when the soldiers come back to the States, or even when the soldiers go back to England, I think that there is a definite slowness in returning the love. And for those of you who are familiar with the veteran community, you might be aware that they are one of the largest groups to have mental health issues that do not go, that do not get handled. There's a large percentage of them who are homeless, you know, face drug addiction, alcohol addiction, and you know, just lack of resources. And like I said, I'm thinking about my former co-worker. When he returned stateside, he did suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome. He also had a slight injury to his leg. In addition to that, he had a hearing problem, and he says that he developed that when he was on the battlefield, and had to constantly deal with the sound of the bombs going off, and you know whatever takes place in a in combat. So he lost his hearing. He was partially deaf, and he always said that he had to struggle over the years. There was also the whole challenge that he had in terms of just getting resources and help as a veteran. So to me, it's one thing for a person to be patriotic to a country, is another for that country to return the patriotism back in taking care of their needs. You know? Yeah. Okay, so I thank you for sharing your time with me. I hope that my hindsight has and will inspire you, and that you will find your own way to blossom.